In November of last year, I posted a video showing a West Virginia judge flipping out at a traffic stop in Moorefield, West Virginia. In response to a stop he admitted was justified, he nevertheless pulled rank on a young police officer, immediately identifying himself as a judge, getting his supervisor on the phone, and later trying to get him fired, including threatening judicial retaliation against that police department. I first exclusively obtained the body cam footage via a FOIA request from that police department. Well, now, that judge is facing suspension according to an order that was issued just late last week. As I explained in my first video on this, Judge Carter Williams was charged with multiple disciplinary violations. Then in February of this year, I published yet another video about Judge Williams being in trouble again over allegations that he kept leaving Walmart without paying for his merchandise. Since Judge Williams contested the matter, as he's entitled to do, of course, on June 14th, a contested hearing was held before West Virginia's Judicial Hearing Board over the course of 3 days. On September 19th, the Judicial Hearing Board held a meeting to discuss the evidence that was presented, and on September 22nd, last week, they issued an order finding that numerous judicial ethics rules were violated, recommending specific discipline to the West Virginia Supreme Court. Let's look at the egregious factual findings from the evidence that was presented by the judicial prosecutors, and then I'll tell you the recommended discipline, and you can tell me whether or not you disagree with that. One other thing I'll say is that, as I've said previously, I've never met or actually practiced in front of this particular judge, but in conversations I've since had with unnamed lawyers who have practiced in front of this judge seems to have a reputation as somewhat of a tyrant. Honest lawyers don't like to practice before judges like this. Reviewing a timeline of just what happened, in this case after his interaction with this police officer, illustrates exactly the reason for it. This original traffic stop that this is about occurred in Moorefield, West Virginia. During the stop, the judge calls the officer's supervisor during the stop and allegedly attempts to stop the issuance of a ticket. After the stop, he makes even more phone calls and even shows up at the mayor's house later that evening. The judge was eventually investigated and charged by the judicial disciplinary authorities. I obtained the body cam footage through a FOIA request to that police department. I also posted the original statement of charges against Judge Williams that was filed by the Judicial Investigation Commission at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. The link to that document, as well as the body cam footage itself, will be in the description below at the blog, as well as the statement of charges regarding the follow-up incident related to Walmart. So this all began on July 11th, 2021, when Judge Williams went out for ice cream with his family. So on the drive home, he was pulled over by a local police officer for having a cell phone in his hand while driving. The judge quickly pulled rank on the young officer, berated him, and even called this officer's supervisor during the traffic stop. Then after the traffic stop, Judge Williams called the officer's supervisor, not sure if it's the same or a different one, plus the police chief, the former police chief, and others, apparently threatening to look, quote, less favorably on cases involving that police department in his capacity as a judge in that jurisdiction. In their order, the Judicial Hearing Board concluded that, quote, there is clear and convincing evidence that the respondent implied he might make rulings in the cases involving the police agency employing that traffic officer that would be influenced by his grievances with being pulled over. So in response to a mere traffic stop where he wasn't even cited, Judge Williams went on a campaign to retaliate against this officer. He threatened to sic the state police on any Moorefield officer he observed driving with a cell phone. He criticized this officer to his supervisors and to others. He called the department sketchy and referred to its officers as boys. He called them piss poor and sloppy. He called them a bunch of thugs, harassing innocent, hardworking people. I guess that was a roundabout way of referring to himself as innocent and hardworking. He accused the officer of possible drug use and referenced a prior unrelated administrative suspension that the officer had received, stating that he shouldn't have been reinstated. The judge later called the prosecuting attorney and said that this officer should not be on the police force. According to the findings in this order, the judge then discussed the possibility of reinstating unrelated criminal charges against this officer. Then he apparently failed to disclose that fact once everything hit the fan, and he began to self-report his misconduct. Oh, the horror of a circuit court judge experiencing the life of the plebes. Was this the first time that he had ever been pulled over? Yes, we do feel commonly harassed by the police over trivial things. But the irony here is that this judge is really the final and ultimate cog in that wheel of harassment. How many people has he kept in jail and then prosecuted following arrests made by police at traffic stops? How many times has he suppressed evidence illegally obtained by law enforcement? I bet you the number is either 0 or darn close to it. The Judicial Hearing Board actually hit the nail pretty much on the head when it wrote in the order, there was clear and convincing evidence that the respondent engaged in conduct that was prejudicial to the administration of justice by being unnecessarily belligerent to the traffic officer, by contacting the traffic officer's supervisor in a manner suggesting he wanted special treatment and punishment for the traffic officer, by contacting the police chief, former police chief, and mayor in a manner suggesting he wanted special treatment, punishment for the traffic officer, and that his rulings in future cases might be influenced by his traffic stop, and the action or inaction taken by police officials in response to his complaints against the officer, and by contacting the prosecuting attorney regarding this same subject matter. So do small town police departments in some towns harass innocent people? Absolutely. Do they sometimes harass people who are technically in violation of some traffic law? Absolutely. Could that have been the case here? Absolutely. Is the state law prohibiting people from having a cell phone in their hand and authorizing law enforcement to initiate a traffic stop on that basis a bunch of statist garbage? Absolutely. But that's a rabbit hole for another video. Do you want to know what is much, much worse? A judge who not only requests, but demands under penalty of official retaliation, special treatment. Why? Because integrity is the currency of the courts. So this calls into question the integrity of every aspect of the system. Who can be trusted now? What can be trusted now? Search warrants, suppression orders, criminal convictions? It's never ending. We call judges Your Honor because we place them in a position of sacred trust over the police, over the prosecutors in particular. This corruption was only exposed here in this case because this police officer dared to treat this judge equally. Otherwise, it would have been business as usual. Now, there ought to be an investigation into the business of the past. Now, here's the recommended discipline. By the way, the Judicial Hearing Board makes the formal recommendation. Then the matter goes on to the West Virginia Supreme Court, who has the final say. They can accept this recommended discipline, or they can go more or go less. So they recommended that Judge Williams be suspended for a period of 1 year, but with all but 3 months of that suspension being stayed pending, quote, supervised probation. Sounds familiar, I'd say. So in effect, a 3-month suspension without pay, but the possibility of up to a year if he has bad behavior. So additionally, they recommended a $5,000 fine as well as reimbursement of $11,129.06 for costs. So we'll have to wait to see what the West Virginia Supreme Court does with it. Also, I take it that this did not include the Walmart allegations, which are still pending as far as I can tell. As always, thanks for watching. You'll find more information about this in the link below to the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. If you have a video you want me to see, please use the submission link in the description or at the blog. If you want to learn more about these sorts of cases, your constitutional rights, please make sure to subscribe. And also, please comment with your thoughts about this case. Was justice served here? Should it have been a full 1-year suspension without pay? Or should the legislature go ahead and just impeach this judge and moot the whole issue? Remember, I don't believe this order even disposes of the Walmart allegations. And what's the point of having a judge preside over the constitutional rights of litigants who requires himself to be supervised? That's a rhetorical question, of course. If you want to support the channel, please consider clicking the join button and becoming a channel member or sponsor. Remember, freedom is scary. Deal with it. See you next time.